I have been following these developments very closely, and I need to explain why this is not just another routine diplomatic dispute. This is something fundamentally different. Let me take you back to the moment when things began to escalate. 2 days ago, Donald Trump appeared in Davos, Switzerland. He attended the World Economic Forum and simultaneously unveiled a new initiative called the Peace Council. Officially, the body is meant to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza following a ceasefire agreement. But Trump's ambitions go far beyond that. He wants to turn it into a counterweight to the United Nations. Countries seeking permanent seats would be required to contribute $1 billion. Canada said it supported the idea in principle, but would not pay that amount. And this is where everything began to take a different turn. On the very same day Trump announced this forum, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered a speech in Davos, and he did not hold back. He spoke bluntly about the need for middle powers to stand up against economic coercion by superpowers. He referred to the erosion of the rules-based international order. He emphasized the right of self-determination for Greenland and Denmark. Trump was watching those remarks, and what I am about to tell you changed the entire atmosphere. Trump stepped onto the stage in Davos and declared, "We are building a golden dome basically to protect Canada. Canada benefits enormously from us. They should be grateful, but they're not." "I watched your Prime Minister's speech yesterday," he continued. "He didn't sound grateful at all. Canada exists because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, for your next speech. And now, what exactly is this so-called Golden Dome he is referring to? It is a massive missile defense system with projected costs running into the hundreds of billions of dollars. Some estimates suggest the project could cost anywhere from $161 billion to $542 billion over the next 20 years. The system is designed around a network of satellites and space-based interceptor missiles intended to destroy ballistic missiles launched from Russia, China, or North Korea before they can reach targets in North America. And here is the detail almost no one is talking about. Trump insists that he needs Greenland for the entire system to function effectively. The Arctic region is critically important because it is the natural flight corridor for intercontinental ballistic missiles. Defense documents show that the Pentagon operates the Patuxent Space Base in Greenland, formerly known as Thule Air Base. This is one of the northernmost early warning radar stations on the planet. But that is still not the most shocking part. Just hours after Trump's speech in Davos, he posted a message on Truth Social and abruptly withdrew Canada's invitation to join the Peace Council. The letter was released publicly and stated, "Please consider this letter formal notice that the Peace Council is withdrawing Canada's invitation to participate in what is the most distinguished council of leaders ever assembled." And the situation becomes even more serious when we turn to Trump's subsequent remarks in Davos. In an interview, he said something that is now causing widespread outrage. When asked about NATO, he declared, "We never really needed them. We never asked them for anything important," he continued. "They'll say they sent troops to Afghanistan, and that's true. But they were just a little bit behind, a little bit away from the front lines." I had to read that passage 3 times when I first saw it, because what we all know to be true is completely different. 457 British soldiers were killed in Afghanistan, more than 150 Canadian troops, 90 French soldiers, and 44 Danish troops. These were not rear area support personnel. British and Canadian forces fought directly in Helmand and Kandahar, 2 of the most dangerous provinces in Afghanistan and key Taliban strongholds. The part that kept me awake last night is this. In the entire history of NATO, Article 5 has been invoked only once, after the attacks of September 11, 2001. Article 5 states that an attack on one member is considered an attack on the entire alliance. Every NATO country answered that call. They sent their sons and daughters to fight alongside American troops in Afghanistan. And now, the President of the United States is saying they merely stood on the sidelines and did not truly serve on the front lines. The reaction to Trump's comments on Afghanistan has been unlike anything I have ever seen in transatlantic relations. And then another development followed. Prince Harry issued a statement, remembering that he served 2 tours in Afghanistan, in 2008 and 2012. He said that in 2001, NATO invoked Article 5 for the first and only time in its history. That meant all allies were obligated to stand shoulder to shoulder with the United States in Afghanistan to defend shared security. "I served there," Prince Harry said. "I made lifelong friends there, and I lost friends there. The United Kingdom alone lost 457 service members. Thousands of lives were changed forever." But the reaction did not stop there. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer spoke out, calling Trump's remarks offensive and, frankly, unacceptable. Appearing on television, he stated clearly that the President of the United States should issue an apology. The UK Defense Secretary emphasized that British forces responded to America's call and that those who fell must be remembered as heroes who gave their lives for their country and for the alliance. According to reports, veterans across Europe are now deeply outraged. Many feel that the sacrifices made by themselves and their comrades are being dismissed, triggering an unprecedented wave of anger within the Allied military community. There is one woman in particular named Diane Durney. Her son Ben Parkinson was critically injured when his Land Rover struck a landmine in Afghanistan in 2006. She described Trump's remarks as an unacceptable insult. She said this on national television. And it is at this point that the situation begins to become truly problematic for US-Canada relations, because this is no longer just about hurt feelings or the distortion of history. The deeper issue lies in what is unfolding right now in Arctic defense. Canada's ambassador to the United States, Kirsten Hillman, addressed the issue when asked about Trump's claim that Canada opposes the deployment of the Golden Dome air defense system. She stated that Canada is committed to spending more than $80 billion on defense over the next 5 years. A significant portion of that funding is earmarked for strengthening Arctic defense capabilities, particularly through investment in new long-range radar systems. What is rarely mentioned is that Canada's geography places it at the center of any missile defense architecture in North America. If Russia or China were to launch missiles toward the United States, the shortest trajectory would almost certainly pass through the Arctic regions of Canadian territory. Recent information indicates that Canada is working closely with the United States through NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. The two countries share radar data, coordinate air defense operations, and integrate early warning systems. But the story does not end there, because Trump later posted another message claiming that Canada opposes the construction of the Golden Dome in Greenland, even though, according to him, the system would help protect Canada as well. He also claimed that Canada had voted to do business with China. And the situation becomes even more serious, because what is now emerging points to a deep fracture in how allies communicate and coordinate with one another. Reports indicate that several European countries have declined to participate in the Peace Council initiated by Trump. The UK Foreign Secretary announced that London would not sign on, citing concerns over the invitation extended to Russian President Vladimir Putin to join the council. And there is one more highly controversial detail. To become a permanent member, the Peace Council requires each country to pay a fee of up to $1 billion. Canada's Minister of Finance, François-Philippe Champagne, spoke very plainly, stating that Canada will not pay to buy a seat on the Peace Council. Canada is willing to participate, but it will not pay a fee of up to $1 billion. And it is this detail that changes the entire picture, because what is unfolding is not simply an American effort to reorganize the global security architecture, but a public affront to allies who have sacrificed the most alongside the United States. Subsequent documents revealed that Canada is not alone in its opposition. Other key allies, including the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, have also declined invitations to join the Peace Council. What is often overlooked in these debates is that NATO is not merely a treaty on paper. It is a tightly integrated defense network. It is an intelligence sharing system that operates daily. It is a continuous series of coordinated operations among allied forces. Canadian troops train alongside American forces. The two countries share bases. They conduct joint patrols in the Arctic and share responsibility for protecting North American airspace. And now, all of these foundations of cooperation are being thrown into uncertainty. But the story does not end there, because the Trump administration quickly moved to defend the president's controversial remarks. The White House spokesperson issued an official statement. The statement said that President Trump is entirely correct in asserting that the United States has contributed more to NATO than any other country. His success in pressuring allies to commit up to 5% of their budgets to defense spending is forcing Europe to take greater responsibility for its own security. According to the White House, the United States is currently the only NATO partner with the capability to defend Greenland, and the president is acting in the collective interest of the alliance by advancing this plan. And it is precisely here that we need to pause and be clear about the true nature of the Golden Dome and why Greenland has become the focal point of this entire dispute. Because from this moment on, the geopolitical stakes become extraordinarily complex. The Golden Dome is described as a multi-layered missile defense system. Officials say the system would rely on a network of sensor-equipped satellites and space-based interceptor missiles. Think of it as Israel's Iron Dome, but scaled up to shield an entire continent. The system would track and destroy ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, and cruise missiles at multiple stages, from launch through mid-course flight to the final approach toward their targets. This is where the problem becomes acute. The Congressional Budget Office has conducted an analysis and produced figures that have stunned many observers. Total costs could range from $161 billion to $542 billion over 2 decades. Congress has committed only $25 billion for the initial phase, but Trump has described that sum as merely a down payment. Then comes the issue of Greenland. Trump is exerting intense pressure in an effort to gain control of the island from Denmark. He insists that Greenland is central to the Golden Dome. A glance at the map is enough to understand part of that argument. Greenland sits directly beneath the flight corridor that missiles from Russia and China would most likely use if they were targeting the United States. But here's the detail that is rarely mentioned. The Pentagon currently operates the Patrific Space Base in Greenland. The base is located above the Arctic Circle, almost midway between Washington and Moscow. It hosts advanced radar systems capable of providing early detection of launches from Russia and tracking the potential trajectories of Chinese missiles. Sources confirm that this radar network gives the United States an extremely valuable window of early warning. Pavel Podvig, a specialist in Russia's nuclear arsenal, has noted that Greenland's location gives Washington additional time to assess a threat and determine an appropriate response. That brief margin can sometimes make the difference between a successful interception and an irreversible catastrophe. This is the detail that kept me awake last night, because French nuclear defense expert Etienne Marcuse raised a point that is deeply unsettling. Trump has never spoken about the need to control the United Kingdom, even though Britain also plays a critical role in the US missile defense system. In northern England, the early warning radar station at Fylingdales continues to operate in service of both governments. So why the fixation on Greenland? And the story becomes even more complicated when we consider what we now know. Trump imposed a 10% tariff on 8 NATO countries that opposed US efforts to assert control over Greenland. He is using economic tools to apply pressure on his own allies. He then abruptly shifted tone after a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, announcing that the two sides had established a framework for a new Arctic security arrangement. But the story does not end there. Internal documents indicate that Trump has quietly complained to advisors about what he sees as Canada's vulnerability to Washington's adversaries in the Arctic. The latest information suggests he is concerned that Canada lacks the capacity to defend its Arctic territory against Russia and China. This detail fundamentally changes how the situation should be understood. Canada shares with the United States one of the longest and most peaceful borders in the world. It is one of America's largest trading partners. The two countries have integrated their defense systems through NORAD, and yet now, the President of the United States is publicly questioning whether Canada is capable of defending its own territory. And then this happened. Trump posted on social media that Canada is voting in China's favor, and that China would swallow them within the first 5 years. He was referring to Prime Minister Carney's announcement last week during his visit to Beijing of a new strategic partnership with China. And this is the pivotal point that has pushed the situation toward crisis, because the Canadian government is now caught between multiple simultaneous pressures. Canada needs to maintain close relations with the United States for both security and trade, but it also cannot allow itself to be seen as surrendering sovereignty or being coerced into spending tens of billions of dollars on defense projects initiated in Washington. Reports indicate that Canada is sharply increasing investment in Arctic defense, with total spending expected to reach roughly $80 billion over 5 years. Canada is building new long-range radar systems, ordering submarines, and adding new aircraft. The Canadian ambassador has stated that these investments will be integrated with US systems to deliver mutual benefits. But this is where the situation becomes truly complex. In practical terms, the Golden Dome would create a defensive umbrella covering all of North America. Canada would benefit from the system regardless of whether it contributes financially, simply because of its geography. And so Trump is implicitly arguing that Canada should show gratitude and pay its share for a system that is in reality primarily designed to protect US territory and assets. Let me explain why this is far more serious than a routine diplomatic spectacle. What we are witnessing reflects a profound shift in how alliances function. The United States and Canada have long shared one of the most peaceful and stable borders in the world. They built a joint defense system during the Cold War through NORAD. Canadian soldiers have fought and died alongside American forces in Afghanistan, Korea, and the Second World War. This relationship has never been based on transactions or simple quid pro quo arrangements. It was built on shared values, shared sacrifice, and long-standing interconnected security interests. And yet there is one point that is rarely acknowledged. Trump's view of alliances resembles the way he runs a commercial contract. Either countries pay, or they are no longer regarded as valuable partners. The problem is that defense relationships cannot be reduced to financial transactions. They rest on trust, strategic coordination, intelligence sharing, and mutual political support. Current sources indicate that many other NATO allies are watching very closely how Canada is being treated. If the United States can exclude Canada from a peace mechanism and publicly diminish its military sacrifices, what signal does that send to NATO countries in Europe? And what about Japan or South Korea? This is the inflection point that changes the entire strategic landscape. Because the Golden Dome may appear technologically impressive, but it cannot function without allied cooperation. Radar stations, satellite networks, and command and control systems all depend on bases and partnerships spread across the globe. Then there is the issue of cost. Internal documents show that even the most conservative scenario, around $161 billion, would make this one of the most expensive defense programs in US history. Some experts argue that the idea of placing interceptor missiles in space echoes the Reagan-era Star Wars initiative of the 1980s, a project that was never fully realized. And it does not end there. Critics also point to fundamental limitations. The system would require thousands of interceptor missiles deployed in orbit around the Earth. Those missile-carrying satellites would have to move at extremely high speeds to remain in orbit. But that very speed means that only a small fraction of them would be in the right place at the right time to intercept a real threat. What we do know for certain is that the US Government Accountability Office warned in early 2025 that the satellite constellation for the Golden Dome project faces a series of serious technical challenges. The Space Development Agency is responsible for building these satellites, but there are still significant questions about whether the technology is truly mature.